Today we're going to be talking about a video by somebody named Chatfield. Chatfield somehow has over 1 million subscribers, and I totally missed him somehow. But he finally showed up on my feed with a Christian professor who is a Young Earth Creationist, and it is a wild ride hearing these two talk. So we're going to watch this video and see what we can make of it.
I don't believe in God. I believe in science, and I especially don't believe in creation theory. I believe in evolution because it's been scientifically proven. Obviously, that's not what I would say. That's what a lot of people who would argue with me in the videos that I put out, that's what they would say. But
okay, let me stop you there for a second. I don't believe in evolution. Evolution is just a fact. Also note how he said creation theory, as if creationism is somehow a respectable scientific theory like evolution. Well, it is not. That's a big problem, my guy. So this is going to be, as I said, a wild ride.
I found on X the other day one of the most compelling arguments from a Christian professor disproving the theory of evolution because
a Christian professor of what exactly? That's a key part that needs mentioning here. What is he a professor of? Because if he is not a biologist, then he really has no ground to speak on this, professor or not. I mean, obviously he can say what he wants. But if he is not an expert in this field, well, there's no reason to think that he has any special inside information.
Evolution is just a theory. I don't know if you really understood that.
I don't know if you really understood what theory means. There is the colloquial definition of theory and the scientific one. In colloquial terms, a theory is basically just a guess. It's, I have this theory that Chatfield is a moron. Pretty good theory, but colloquial, not necessarily the same as a scientific theory. A scientific theory, on the other hand, explains a scientific fact. The theory of evolution explains the fact of evolution. Likewise, the theory of gravitation explains the fact of gravity. Well, sort of.
It can't be scientifically proven, and he'll talk about it in this video.
How can it not be scientifically proven? What are all the scientists in biology doing? Every biologist essentially works from the perspective that evolution is real. That's, hundreds of thousands at least, maybe millions of biological scientists out there, certainly millions over time. What do you mean? What are they all doing? Are they just being paid to sit around and do nothing?
So I'm going to play this video. I'm going to give some commentary about what he says. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to show you one of the most amazing videos I've seen on the internet of a compilation of doctors, of scientists who are saying that they are highly skeptical of Darwinian evolution. And
what do you want to bet? It's the Intelligent Design Creationist Unit, the Discovery Institute, and their people with that scientific dissent from Darwinism letter, which is signed by something like 1,000 people who are mostly engineers. This is a good time to bring up the Salem hypothesis. Which suggests that engineers are more likely to be creationists than any other field in what you might call STEM, because they are primed by their education and their way of thinking to see design in everything, including nature.
It's going to really challenge the things that you believe and have been taught all through school. But check out what
No, it isn't.
This guy has to say specifically on why we should not take Darwinian evolutionary theory that seriously.
But my friend, we are going to, and there is nothing you can do about that. Neither you nor Christian professor can do anything about that. Evolution is science, and it will continue being taken seriously by scientists.
The entire authenticity of the Bible. If you can prove that the Genesis story is false, you have destroyed the entire belief system on which Christianity is based.
Only if you take it literally. Only if you are a literalist. Which, by the way, Christians, you don't have to be.
So that's why we use this model to show people that Noah's Ark was real and that the story is true.
Well, couldn't the... So you can't see it yet, but they have a gigantic model Noah's Ark in front of them, which doesn't really prove much of anything. And in fact, I think that you couldn't really build something as big as Noah's Ark with wood. I think that is impossible without any kind of steel reinforcement or what have you. So I'm not sure how a model of Noah's Ark is going to prove Noah's Ark. You can make a model of anything.
story have been symbolic, metaphor for other kinds of events that took place? How about creation? Couldn't that have been symbolic or metaphorical in the language that's there?
Well, it is possible, but when we look at the four postulates of creation and we compare them with the four postulates
Oh my God, they are spelling postulates really bad here, unless they're using a different word I have never heard or seen before.
of evolution, only the postulates of creation have been observed. Evolution is based on four.
What the hell are you talking about? Nothing relating to creationism has been observed, and evolution is about as factual as facts can get. I mean, it has been observed. We have mountains of evidence for evolution, which, of course, I'm going to have to go over in this video, no doubt.
Four major ideas. None of them have ever been observed. Number one, that life comes from non-life.
Well, we have good ideas of how that process happened. I mean, everywhere we look, we see amino acids. Everywhere we look, we see water and carbon, which are the ingredients of more advanced multicellular life. We have pretty good evidence that these things happened, and we are here. But we haven't done it yet. We have not created life from non-life in a lab. However, we are working on it, and obviously nature had, billions and billions and billions of years, like 10+ billion years to work on it before getting it right on Earth. We have not had that much time in science. We have not been experimenting for that long, and it will happen at some point, and when it happens, you gotta wonder how their arguments will change, because it will happen, almost like guaranteed. If it happened once, it can happen again. But also, I do feel the need to point out here that he says we have not seen one single example of life coming from non-life. The problem is, even creationists believe life came from non-life. Think of the Genesis story of Adam and Eve and, that sort of thing. God took something that was non-living and made it living. That's life from non-life also. It's just a, supernatural magic Skyman version of it.
Have not one single example of life coming from non-life. Number two, that all the life forms that we have today came from single-cell life forms.
I mean, DNA is pretty good evidence of that. DNA is the common linkage of all life on Earth, and anywhere we look, we find DNA. I mean, almost. Like viruses, I think, are like mostly not DNA, RNA, or entirely non-DNA. But for pretty much every life form out there, DNA is the common linkage between us. It is a shared language of, you might call, creation. Of course, there was no creation, but, thanks to DNA, we can chart the evolution of life back a very, very long time. It's there. It's in the DNA.
Many people do not know that while we do have single-cell life forms that we call bacteria, we have no two-celled life forms. We don't have three-cell life forms. We don't have four-cell life forms. We don't even have five-cell life forms. That is, we go from single-cell bacteria to complex life forms. So there's no evidence that all life comes from single-cell life forms.
This is kind of a non sequitur. So what if there's no 2, 3, 4, 5-celled life forms or organisms? It just so happens that I suppose multicellular life evolved in a very different direction, and it probably wasn't like evolutionarily advantageous to have, 2 cells or 3 cells or 4 cells or 5 cells. It was probably more evolutionarily advantageous to keep going and adding to the cells or stay in the single-celled form. I mean, think about like where we find a lot of single-celled life forms. They're some of the most harsh environments known on this planet. So I don't see why we need to have that exactly for evolution to be a real thing. I mean, we can still link ourselves to these species, these single-celled life forms and such. So I really don't see why it's a big deal.
The third postulate of evolution is that time and chance drive evolution forward, of course, and time works against.
Let me start with this thing about the evolution deal, because I want to show you. I was just at the Smithsonian Natural History Museum a little while ago, and I want to show you this chart. What's amazing is we see this chart when in regards to teaching evolution like all the time, right? Let's see if I can zoom in. There we go. We see this chart. We see like the chimpanzee that becomes this like monkey man, which then eventually becomes a human. And what's interesting,
ridicule doesn't make your point stronger. Maybe it does with an audience of people who are essentially, well, morons. but it really doesn't make your point stronger. And he is trying to do some mild ridicule here, so just keep that in mind.
To me is like, you know, if natural selection, if the law of natural selection is like that there's this mutation process that happens that makes one species more advanced than a previous species, and then all of the other ones die off, and then
That's not how that works. It's not like humans are more advanced than other species. We just evolved in a different direction. Of course, this guy probably understands family trees, but he doesn't understand that evolution also has family trees. We did not evolve from the same line as modern apes. We branched off. We are a different branch on the family tree, on the tree of life, than they are. Why would you expect them to go extinct? I mean, he doesn't know this, and he's probably about to, like, stomp all over it, but other hominids existed at the same time as humans. Some of our ancestors existed at the same time as us. We have Neanderthal genes in our DNA. We have like 30%, I think, of the Neanderthal genome is represented over the whole of humanity. The average person is going to have very low percentages of Neanderthal DNA, but it is there. They were another species that branched off in a different direction, and we either, I guess you could say, mated with them out of existence, or just unalived them out of existence, or some combination thereof. Either way, we did exist alongside them.
gene is then passed on to like mutate an entire species over millions of years. What's interesting about this process
is that, that all the way to the left, that is not supposed to be a chimpanzee. This is a very common misconception. He sees this and he thinks, that must be a, chimp or something. Actually, chimps are much bigger than that, so regardless. But let's just say chimp. That's a chimpanzee or something like that. Well, no, it's not. That's intended to represent a much earlier form of life than anything alive today, a common ancestor between the other apes and humanity.
And this is what the whole Natural History Museum evolution exhibit kind of teaches.
And why do you think that is, Cap? Why do you think the Smithsonian is out here teaching evolution instead of creation if there's so much more evidence for creation? Is it some kind of big conspiracy, Cap? Is that what this is? Is this what I'm seeing here?
Is you have this over here, the monkey, and then you have man over here, and then there's all of this process that happens in between. Yet today, we still have this species.
No, we don't. That species is our ancestor, a shared ancestor between modern apes and humans, most likely. We do not have that species. That species has gone extinct. That species no longer exists. That species was replaced, supplanted, so on and so forth. It does not exist anymore.
And we still have this species, but we don't have any of the species in between. So if this species was the least dominant species genetically, and then it became more genetically advanced, how come we only have the beginning and the end? We don't have anything today that still exists. If anything, I would imagine that none of these would exist, yet we still have the first one. It's kind of...
No, we don't. We don't have the first one. We don't have any of the other ones along the line. The only one alive today is humans. Modern apes branched off from earlier apes shared with the ancestry of humans. That's how it works. Sorry, Cap, you just don't understand because you haven't actually tried to learn about evolution. You are a creationist, and you have a very superficial, shallow understanding of evolution, what it is, and how it works. That is a you problem and doesn't mean the whole of science is wrong.
Kind of a similar point that my man's making about the single-cell bacteria.
The third postulate of evolution is that time and chance drive evolution forward, of course, and
who made these postulates of evolution exactly? What are these postulates of evolution? Also, that is a weird-looking ark. That is not what I would expect the ark to look like. There is no way something like that would survive at sea. Fantastic work, creationists. You really killed me with this one. Also, look at the gigantic dinosaurs. You can't see it currently, but when it goes back, you may be able to. But look at the gigantic dinosaurs when it goes back. Like, how are all of those going to fit on the ark? Jesus Christ.
Time works against evolution. The chance of one simple 100-unit protein coming together by accident this is a very big number. Time and chance make evolution absolutely impossible. The fourth postulate.
It's a very big number, and I'm not even going to bother talking about it. So let's talk about big numbers since he's not going to bother. Big numbers can be very misleading, and you see something like that and you think, wow, what a big number. But let's talk about big numbers. Have you ever seen sand before? I mean, that's pretty much sand in the background. I guess it's more like dirt, maybe. But I mean, this is like supposed to be Las Vegas, so there is a lot of sand around there. You've seen sand before, most likely, and if you haven't, I wonder where you live. But sand, there's a lot of sand on the planet, isn't there? It's beaches, there are deserts, there's a whole lot of sand on this planet. There are about 10,000 stars for every single grain of sand in the observable universe. Now, let's talk about numbers. Let's keep talking about numbers. We're already on numbers. Let's talk about some more numbers. That may seem like a huge number, and it is. But let's put that in context. We are in a galaxy, you see? And in this galaxy, there is something like a couple 100 billion stars, most likely. Let's say, just guesstimate, that there's an average of 5 planets per star. 5 planets per star. That leaves us with about 1 trillion planets. Now, from what we've discovered so far, we've discovered about 6,000 exoplanets. That's about 6,000 planets outside of our solar system. Some of those are rogue planets free-floating about the cosmos, and most of them are around stars. So we're going to include all of them anyway. Not going to discriminate here. We don't discriminate on this channel. So 1 trillion planets, and we've discovered about 1% of all the planets we currently know of are in the habitable zones of their stars, much like we are. 1% of 1 trillion is 10 billion. That's 10 billion planets in the habitable zones of their stars in this galaxy alone. And this galaxy has existed for a very, very long time, much longer than this solar system has. And on top of that, I've seen estimates of anywhere from 500 billion to 2 trillion galaxies in the cosmos. The cosmos, at least the observable part of the cosmos, our part of the cosmos. And so we're talking 10 billion times anywhere from 500 billion to 2 trillion. That's a whole lot of habitable planets. The crazy numbers these people use start to look a lot less crazy when you realize just how big the other numbers involved are, especially when you add in something like time, which, by the way, is also a very big number, especially when you're like dragging it out across the entire universe. I mean, that's a lot of time, that's a lot of space, that's a lot of planets. I mean, it's just like these numbers that they use are very misleading because there are a lot of other numbers that are very big and really do damage to their cause in particular.
I think that's just common sense, personally. Like, if you were to put all of your clothes in a drying machine, right? And you were looking to run that dry cycle until all of those clothes came out of that dryer and they were neatly folded. The idea is that somehow this random combination of spins is going to make all of these clothes eventually come out perfectly folded. Like, to me, that would be an easier task than for all of these genetic code to like eventually become something more complex than they were before. I would imagine that it would be mathematical.
Poor Cap is trying his best. Let's all give him a hand for trying so hard and doing so poorly at it. I mean, brilliant stuff, Cap.
Impossible, statistically impossible to run that machine enough times to produce one pile of folded laundry, much less an entire ecosystem of evolved species that are...
Evolution is not a random process. It is not a random series of accidents. It is I mean, the mutations are accidental, but the survival of different genes is, like, largely not. Genes that make a species more fit to survive are passed down. Genes that are not, they just, disappear. They die out. Those species don't make it. They don't reproduce. They don't spread their genes, and they just don't make it. The evolutionary arms race has been going a long time, and it is not entirely random like he thinks it is.
Are way, way different than how they originally came out. I'm not a scientist, but for me, it just...
You don't say.
That doesn't make sense.
That evolution...
Maybe you should become a scientist. Go to school for biology, learn the science, and see if you come out with the same opinion. I would be willing to bet the answer would be no, assuming you could actually get through it.
Is based on is that what we see today, minor genetic variation in species, is evidence of macroevolution. So
it is, and here's how that works. If you have a large enough number of small changes over a very long period of time, you end up with a new species. Speciation is just when species can no longer breed with one another, basically. I mean, that's not necessarily the definition, but it's a pretty good definition. I mean, we do consider dogs, domesticated dogs, to be a different sort of species than wolves. They are of the same type of species in a sense, because, you know, they are canines. But they are very different animals. If you compare a wolf and a dog, I mean, wolves, they are pretty different things, you know. They can breed with each other, yes, but they're very different things. And if you give that enough time, and they've only split off recently, like tens of thousands of years ago, maybe like what, anywhere from like 12 to 20,000, I think it was. It's been a long time. That information's probably out of date. Google it yourself. Maybe I should have before this, but I didn't think I'd be bringing up wolves. So you give it enough time, and eventually those species aren't going to be able to breed anymore. You give it another 100, 200,000 years, probably domesticated dogs and wolves won't be able to breed anymore. Probably. I mean, not necessarily, but probably. It seems like a strong possibility. And that's because they'll be separated for so long, dogs will evolve, and so on and so forth. And that's how it works, speciation. When species can't breed with each other anymore, you have effectively created a new species. And again, it may take a lot longer than 100 or 200,000 years, but it's the sort of thing where, like, you could see it happening. If there's enough genetic mutations adding up over a long enough period of time, it could happen. I'd say it would take longer, really, but, like, who's to say?
Because cats are different colors, dogs are different sizes, that means that fish turned into cows.
Nobody is saying fish turned into cows. Evolution does not work in reality like it works in Pokemon. I love Pokemon, don't get me wrong, but Pokemon is not a scientific education tool. Pokemon is a fictional series. It's a video game. It's not real life, and nobody in human history has said a fish evolved into a cow, except you, most likely. So let's keep that in mind.
And of course, we know that that's not true because Mendel proved that all the genes that exist today, you can shuffle them around, but there are no new genes that were created.
What are you talking about? You know, I am no scientist, but I'm pretty sure that is extremely wrong.
Let's think about the four major postulates.
Or is he just talking about the genetic code as we label it, you know, what are the letters are like A, G, C, T? Is he talking about that it's just like the letters are just moving around? Because, like, you know, we are the ones who, like, defined that particular system. That's just our way of labeling the system and making it more coherent to how we work and how we think about things. Maybe that's what is being discussed here. I don't know. I tend to not trust Christian Professor a whole lot.
Postulates of creation. Number one, where there's a design, there must be a designer.
Well, prove that. Let's see some proof for that, why don't we?
We see codes in DNA. Codes are evidence of intelligence. But
we don't see codes in DNA the same way that you see, you know, design in a watch. These are very different things. We don't see any signs of a designer in DNA like we see designs in a watch. Actually, again, DNA is just all the way through evidence that evolution is real and that it happened. Ignore this if you want to, but it's at your own peril because that's how it works. DNA is the result of billions of years. It is the language of evolution. That's what DNA is. You could not think of a better proof for the idea of evolution than DNA. Even fossils don't really compare to the magic of DNA. And let's be honest, you know, Magic Sky Wizard can't really compare. His designs aren't that grand compared to what evolution itself does. I mean, think about it. Think about it like this. He created Adam and Eve out of, like, dust or whatever. That's not a very good design. That's not a very good way to do it, I don't think.
Because you have to translate from one language to another. We have not a single example of that happening by accident. Number two.
These people really harp on the whole accidents thing. They want us to think everything that causes evolution is just accidents. But it isn't. It's not just accidents. I mean, things just happen in evolution. That's certainly true. Like, you know, genetic mutations that result in a species being more able to survive or thrive. That's kind of random, I guess. I mean, but it's really not because, like, natural law sort of determines it beforehand. But, you know, they like to act like everything is an accident, that it's just a series of happy accidents that led to humanity. It's not. That
the Earth, the solar system, the universe, and the galaxy are young measured in thousands of years, not millions or billions of years. Many times people ask me, they say, well, Major, you believe in a young earth, a 6,000-year earth. Can you show me that that's true without using the Bible? And I say, absolutely. What's the oldest living thing on the planet? The oldest living thing on the planet? Trees. How old are the oldest trees? 4,500 years. That takes
Wrong. Let me just look this up really quickly because it's been a while and I want to make sure I get this correct. All right, so there is a tree. Pando, the world's largest tree, is a quaking aspen. It's a clone in central Utah. The tree, an individual male clonal organism, has an estimated 47,000 stems that appear as individual trees but are connected by a root system that spans 106 acres. How old is Pando, you might ask? Well, I'm glad you asked. Pando is estimated to be about 12,000 years old. So there we have it. Pando must be God because Pando is twice the age of the earth.
Takes us back almost exactly to the year of the flood, okay, in 2500 BC.
Remarkable.
Number two, I'm saying, look at the sky. We call solar nebulae. A solar nebula is what we see from a supernova when a star explodes. It leaves a gas cloud. Because of our radio telescopes that we have now today, we can look deep into space and we can actually count the number of solar nebulae that are there. And how many are there? A supernova takes place about once every 26 years. How many solar nebulae do we have? 6,000 years worth.
Okay, well, that's wrong. That's very wrong, and I mean it's wrong in general, but he's using very odd terminology here, I would say, first of all, but he's wrong. And, he's going to leave out one other thing that he should probably mention. The speed of light is about 186,000 miles per second, or about 300,000 kilometers per second if you're from a place that uses proper units of measurement. And this is a big problem for young Earth creationists, not old Earth creationists, but young Earth creationists. Very big problem, because if it were the case that the universe is 6,000 years old and the speed of light has been consistent throughout that, then they have a big problem because we wouldn't be able to see more than 6,000 light years away. Here's why that's a big problem. We wouldn't be able to see Sagittarius A star, the black hole, the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy, which is something like, 26,000 light years away? So the universe has to be at least 26,000 light years away. What else can we see out there that is pretty far away? Well, Andromeda is pretty far away. It's about 2 million light years away. And that means we're seeing the light from it about 2 million years ago. You keep going. You can go back billions and billions of years just based on things we're seeing the light of from billions of light years away. This is a big problem for creationists, and of course, they never have good answers for that. I mean, unless God just created the universe to allow us to see all these things immediately for some reason. But yeah, he's not going to mention that, is he?
That's impossible in a universe that is billions and billions of years old.
Your face is impossible in a universe that's billions and billions of years old. No, man, it's not impossible, and this whole argument is silly. The big silly, and I would like to think he knows it, but let's be honest. You don't have to be brilliant in every field to be a professor. Professors can have a lot of knowledge in one area and just be complete morons in other areas. So I think if you're making a big Noah's Ark that's as big as a stage to illustrate how Noah's Ark is real, and you think this is good evidence, you probably just have expertise in one area, and you're stepping way, way outside of your field to do what you're doing here on this show.
First of all, again, I know the Word of God, I know God, and I know how to create content. I'm not a scientist. So if
you can say that again.
If you got to refute this, I'm open to you refuting it in the comments. Please be kind. I'm willing to be kind with you.
No, I don't have to be kind if someone is seemingly completely unwilling to learn and has no interest in it. I'm not going to be kind when you are just here talking nonsense, blatantly and openly misinforming people about these things. You are wrong, Cap. You are wrong, and honestly, this video, to anybody who understands evolution, makes you seem like a not very intelligent guy. And I'm not being an asshole there. I'm just being honest with you, man. Cap, you need to do some study. You need to do some research from real scientists. That evolution exhibit at the Smithsonian, try reading it.
So be cordial, but this is a really interesting discussion. And what I love about this is that some people think that if you're going to believe the Bible, that all of a sudden you don't believe that science has any merit. But
well, obviously you don't. You are here disputing science. This is not science. This is disputing science. You are essentially taking a big hammer and just destroying all of science with it. You're taking a big jackhammer and smashing everything scientists have built and saying, "Behold." And yeah, this is you like directly disrespecting science, not understanding it, and not thinking it's real.
when you really believe that God is the creator of all things, science doesn't scare you because science is the
Well, it obviously does, because you've made this video and a bunch of other videos like this. This guy's going out of his way to prove evolution isn't real based on misinformation and bad numbers. Obviously, it does threaten you quite a lot.
observation of the natural world. And if God created all things are going to point to him being the creator anyway. That's what
But they don't, or there wouldn't be atheists like me.
it says in the book of Romans. All of creation points to the reality of God and his existence.
And atheists don't believe in that book, so we have no reason to take that quote seriously. So that was part one of a two-part video, and I thank you for watching. I know this is a long one, and I hope that if you see this one before the other one, you'll watch that one also, because it gets worse. Thanks for watching.